All right, everybody. In this video, I'm going to be covering the basics of making an assembly file. So I have here the Puzzle Cube 1 part that I uploaded to Schoology. You should have downloaded this and moved it into the Puzzle Cube folder in your K drive. Um, Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get several of these into the same file um, and assemble them together to form basically a tower to get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Open, or I'm sorry, that's wrong. File new, because I don't have this file yet. And instead of creating a new part file, I'm going to create an assembly file. An assembly file is made using multiple part files and putting them into a certain order or configuration. So anything that has multiple pieces, like one of your puzzle cube pieces, you'd want to make that in a assembly file. Now, you notice the assembly file is blank, but our ribbon looks different than it does in a part file. If I jump back over to here, right, we have all these modeling tools. You don't do any actually sketching or modeling in an assembly file. Instead, we place part files. So I'm going to click place, and if I'm in the correct folder, I should be able to find Puzzle Cube 1 and open it. Now, if I zoom out, you notice it's kind of a ghost right now. As soon as I click it, it's going to go be more solid. And I can do all my normal panning and orbiting if I need to in this mode. But I'm going to go ahead and click two of them down and then right click my mouse and select OK. Now, one thing I'd recommend doing at this point is going to the Review tab and changing your visual style to shaded with edges. It just makes them slightly easier to see. So I basically want to take one of these cubes and put it on top of the other. Now you'll notice that I can move them around freely with my mouse, and I can even put them so that they are in the same space. So objects in Inventor, they don't have any, like they're not solid. Inventor doesn't know anything about their surface properties, so they can just pass right through each other like ghosts, but obviously we don't want them to do that. So what I want to do is take this cube and stack it on top of this one and insert the peg into the bottom hole of this cube right here. There's a couple ways to do that. So we have to use a tool in the assembly tab called constrain. And this is going to be your main way of creating assembly files. So once I click constraint, I get all these different options, and constraints are like rules you apply to different parts to constrain their movement. And the most basic constraint you select right here, and we call this a mate constraint. So it's a double mate, mate. And what that constraint does is it picks two surfaces and mates them together like parts of a sandwich or something. Sorry, just picking up where I left off. So a mate, you pick two surfaces and it's going to mate them together. So let's see how that works. So if I take this surface and mate it to this surface, my cubes are going to get pressed together. And if I go ahead and apply that constraint, I can't separate them anymore. So if I look straight from the right, if I drag this cube over, they stay stuck together like they're glued together. Now, you can actually separate them like this, but you'll notice they're still lined up. It's just they're at a different point. I can't move them back at all. So there's basically a plane in between them that they're both stuck to. Even if they're not physically touching, those two surfaces have to stay in a line like that. Now, let's go back to my home view here. So I actually want this to be mated differently. So anytime you need to delete a constraint, you can look over here at your model tab and you'll see the constraints listed out beneath both cubes. I can pick one of them and delete it. Once I delete my constraint, now they're free to move around again. You notice they don't drag each other around anymore. So let's mate the top of this with the bottom of this. So I'll select the top surface as this, but I can't see the bottom, so I actually have to switch my view cube around and select the bottom. Now you must click this apply button or else your constraint is not going to stay. If you select OK, that's fine, but it'll just exit you out of the constraint tool. You'll have to open it back up. So this is pretty good. They are mated in a tower. Go ahead and place a couple more. So let's place 3 more. 1, 2, 3. And I'll just get more practice doing that. So, oops, not place. I want to hit constrain. Select the top of this and pick one of the cubes, put it at the bottom. Now, you'll notice an interesting thing has happened here, which is it looks like we broke our tower. We actually didn't. These are all constrained together, okay? It's just that there's nothing telling me they have to stay in a line. So if I look at them right now, that's correct. but I can move them all over the place like this, and they'll stay vertically aligned. So one thing you can do to make this a lot easier on yourself is ground one of your pieces. Grounding means it's going to lock it in place in the 3D space. So I simply right-click my bottom piece and select grounded. Now that piece is locked. If you look at it over here in the model tab, it has a little pin next to it, and it actually can't move. So now the whole thing doesn't move around, and it'll just work out a little bit better. So let's continue to constrain. Constraint menu at the top, orbit to look at the bottom, constrain that over there. Notice how it snapped the piece over there because the whole thing is grounded. Apply, top to bottom, apply. So now I have a pretty good tower, but it's all wonky, right? I can move these cubes around. You know, it's not a very pretty tower. So really what I want to be able to do is tell Inventor that I want all of these surfaces to be lined up so that it would be smooth if I run my hand along it. And we use a different constraint for that. We still stay on the mate type over here, but we select the second option for a flush surface. So you can kind of see the icon there. So if I flush these two surfaces, they remain in a line. So if I go ahead and apply that, you'll see I can no longer separate these surfaces. I can only move it this way, but if I look from the side, I cannot drag this cube anywhere. Okay. So let's go ahead and flush our whole way up. So mate flush, apply, apply, apply. Now you can probably guess what the last thing we need to do is. We need to also flush this side over here. So I'll just start doing that as well. Apply, 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 apply. We are now what we call fully constrained. So usually one mate and two flushes creates a fully constrained object. I cannot move in any direction. Okay, you'll notice I get that little circle with the line through it, meaning my movement is fully constrained and the bottom part is grounded. If you unground the bottom, now I can move the whole thing around, but it can't separate. So you might want that behavior too, but I'll go ahead and ground this bottom part again. Okay, I'm going to stop that video here.